So good evening, everyone. It's such an honor to be here. So this is panel 2, and the title is Japan in the South, the Significance of Grassroots Exchange. And today we are focusing this panel on the South, as the title says, and we have distinguished, truly, it's such an honor to be here on the stage with all of you, distinguished panelists from organizations that involve in the Japan-U.S. relationships. And we are going to discuss the Japan-U.S. relations and the presence of Japan in this region and the significance, if I can say that word, significance of the Grassroots Exchange in the South. So let me introduce, first we have, Consul General Fukushima, and for the Consulate General of Japan in Nashville. Round of applause. Thank you. And then next we have Yoshi Domoto, the Executive Director of the Japan-American Society of Georgia. And you actually have already seen him in a picture before. So later on at the reception, whoever figured out where you saw him before this panel in one of the slides, you get, what do we get? A special gift from Yoshi. Whatever that special gift may be. And if you want a hint, you can come and ask me, because I'll give you a little hint. And then lastly, but definitely not least, Masami Tyson. She is the Global Director of Foreign Direct Investment and Trade, the state of Tennessee. And also she is a chairwoman of Japan-American Society of Tennessee. Yes, so talking about heavy hitters here. There's so much we want to ask you. It's really difficult to choose the questions, but because you all have such a wonderful role and responsibilities and backgrounds, so we would love for you all to start with an introduction of what you do, and also if you can tell us a little bit about. Let's see, if you have some kind of grassroots experience as well, if you can share a little bit about that. So please start.
Thank you, Nozomi-san, for your kind introduction, and thank you for having me today, and it's very nice to see you all. I'm Kayoko Fukushima, Consul General of Japan in Nashville, and I've been Consul General for about a year and 10 months. And our consulate covers the 5 states in the South, which are Tennessee and Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, as well as Arkansas. And consulates covers to promote bilateral relations between Japan and those 5 state areas in variety of fields, including political relations and also business economic relations, as well as cultural exchanges. And maybe talking about my career experience, I joined the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan about 40 years ago in 1981. And as a part of the ministry, I was stationed in various places in the world, including Boston. I studied at the graduate school for 2 years in graduate school in Boston. And I was also at the Japanese consulate in New York, covering the JET program and other cultural affairs. And I was also working on press and media relations as well as cultural exchanges as a part of the Japanese embassy in Thailand. I was stationed in Bangkok for 2 years and 4 months, as well as being culture attaché a long time ago in Dublin, Ireland for 3 years. So my work involves a variety of aspects of Japanese diplomacy, but I experience a lot of cultural exchanges in my positions. So I now know the importance of cultural exchanges, grassroots exchanges, as well as our coordination with the JOI coordinators. Like, for example, in our consulate at Nashville, in my early days of my work, it was in February 2019. I was in Chattanooga here, yes, and the consulate organized a film featuring the Chune Sugihara, who saved the lives of the many Jewish people in 1940s. And there, our consulate cooperated with, or got cooperation from, Miss Yumi Shimada, who was mentioned at the previous session and who is here. I'm very glad to see her today. And she was kind of instrumental in making the event a full house event, bringing in many students from University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, including those who belong to Japan Club, as well as local citizens. So that is the one of the example of our liaisoning or cooperating with JOI coordinators, or those who are engaged in grassroots events have turned out to be very successful. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. What an amazing experience you have, and I know there's so much more. Well then, Yoshi-san, if you can share about what you do, and if also because I know, but you have a long history with JOI, and it's a family affair. So if you don't mind sharing a little bit about that as well.
Sure. So hello, everyone. My name is Yoshi Domoto. I'm the executive director of the Japan-America Society of Georgia. We are a nonprofit organization that basically brings together the Japanese and American communities together in Georgia through business, cultural exchange, educational programming, and also promoting friendship through social activities as well. So as Takeo-san in the previous panel, I may look a little different from the pictures shown, I guess, in the JOI commemorative video. But yeah, so I do have, I guess, some unique, I guess, connections to JOI. My father is Japanese, actually, and my mother's American. So I guess I'm sort of a product of Grassroots Exchange in a way. I moved from actually Japan to America, to North Carolina of all places. So I kind of subconsciously was involved with Grassroots Exchange and trying to teach about, my fellow friends about Japan and where I came from. At the same time, trying to learn English as a second language, as many JOI coordinators do, and then kind of learn about kind of the American way of life, particularly in the South, right? So, I grew up in both Japan and the U.S., but was lucky enough to be part of the JET program, which Consul General saw and continues to oversee too. And I was lucky enough to go to Osaka and teach English for 2 years there. And so I got to experience kind of the opposite viewpoints of the JOI coordinator, as a Japanese American going to Japan and teaching English and teaching American culture. After getting back from JET, I was lucky enough to get a position with the Japan-America Society of Georgia, and been kind of working with Grassroots Exchange ever since. I guess at the professional level too. But as Nozomi-san said, has some kind of behind-the-scenes experience with the JOI program. I guess one of the hints with the quiz that Nozomi-san mentioned was that my first connection with JOI was, I guess, during year one. I was in college, which kind of give away my age a little bit, but in a small school in Atlanta, we had the pleasure of helping some of the first-year JOI coordinators do some cultural training and kind of basically teach what it's like to live and work in the South. So I was, I guess, a pseudo kind of volunteer working from the side and helping the first-year JOIs kind of get to learn, what it's like to live and work here, but also what it's like to maybe live with a host family and homestay, right? Which I think maybe that's a conversation we can have at the reception, but I think there's a whole lot of homestay and host family stories that that we can kind of talk through during the communication. But yeah, so I've had a kind of very unique opportunity of kind of seeing kind of behind the scenes as a volunteer. And then kind of speaking of, I was a programs coordinator with the Japan American Society when we first hosted a JOI coordinator. At that time, the society or our organization was kind of coming out of a lot of challenges, and our JOI coordinator actually really helped kind of redevelop our organization and kind of build up our organization. So in a way, the legacy of JOI is really connected with our organization. Is that that JOI coordinator, really almost kind of saved our organization and kind of built to what it is today. And then just recently, we also hosted a JOI coordinator, and I was lucky enough to be the supervisor, and really enjoyed my time kind of working together to kind of expand our outreach. As Georgia is a very large state. Atlanta is a big city, but any place outside of Atlanta, it's a very different, almost a different country. So we had the unique challenge of trying to promote Japan and Japanese culture and language in places outside of Atlanta in a very different demographic throughout the state of Georgia. So, but yeah, that's my story and sticking to it. But I think there's a lot more to talk about with Grassroots Exchange and how important it is, not just in the South, but throughout the world.
Yes, thank you. Definitely can hear your experience and your long history with the JOI program. And I think he left out something about his mother also being involved in the program. You actually saw her in a picture, I believe, already. Again, another thing you can ask about him at the reception. So, Masami-san, you have an amazing background and your current role as well, so please tell us about you.
Thank you, Michiko-san. Sorry, Nozomi-san of Michiki Morgan. Hello, my name is Masami Tyson, and thank you so much for letting me be a part of this wonderful program. And I just want to say, I have to admit, I was not very familiar with JOI until I was asked to speak today, and I got to learn about it a little bit. And today, during the first panel, really now have a very good idea of what it is. And I've been thinking about how can I get some of these people to help me with my work. Actually, maybe we can talk about this at the reception. But as Nozomi-san said, my title is Global Director for Foreign Direct Investment and Trade for the state of Tennessee. And what that means is I work for the department that is tasked with creating jobs for Tennesseans. And the great news is 1 out of every 3 jobs that's created in Tennessee today is by foreign companies. And of the foreign companies that are in Tennessee, by far the biggest investor is Japanese companies. And so, of course, I am biased, but I am very proud of that, and I'm very grateful to the Japanese companies that have decided to invest in Tennessee. And as for Grassroots, just to tell you a little bit about my background, I was born and raised in Japan. I'm from Yokohama. I was there until I was 18, and then I came to the United States to go to college. So I think that perhaps sort of what Yoshi was saying, I'm sure that I engaged in grassroots exchanges daily as I came and became a student here and learned to live in the United States and, just develop friendships and relationships. And then, without really knowing that that was what I was doing, because I think I remember moments where, I would have care packages from my mom come, and this is way before the days of internet and any of all that good stuff. So, those care packages were very, very, very important to survival, and it would include little treats and things like that from Japan. And I remember my roommates asking me what certain Japanese delicacies were, and I would explain. So there was that experience, and then in my daily work. So as I said, I help recruit foreign companies to come to Tennessee. And I witness that all the time. So what I mean by that is, as I said, our job is to create jobs and then, capital investment. And, Senator Haggerty took my punchline, actually. So let me repeat. There are over 53,000 jobs created by Japanese companies in Tennessee. That's over $19 billion investment. I don't think he mentioned this, so let me tell you, that's 200 companies in Tennessee. And, those numbers are impressive, and we are grateful for that. But what I love the most is the relationships that develop as a result of that. And I don't say that lightly. I don't say that just because I'm on this panel. I mean this from the bottom of my heart. What I get to see is these Japanese companies, some expats, come over and, create a home in Tennessee and then get to become a part of the communities. So I think, Gabriel, you were talking about how Laurasian and the other organizations represented here facilitate the creation of those relationships with the communities. And I thought, oh my goodness, that's exactly what I do. So I recruit these companies to come here, our department recruits these companies to come here, but the rest, the communities and the companies do on their own when it comes to relationship building. And I can come up with many stories to tell you, but there's one I can share. This is a company called Denso, which is in East Tennessee, in Maryville. And they have created thousands of jobs. And so, of course, we're grateful for that. But there was a project a couple years ago where the Denso wanted to do something for the local community. So what they did was they took a American English language children's story and translated it into Japanese. And I was very fortunate to be able to be a part of that. I translated that. And when you go to these state parks, they have these story trails or book trails. And so kids would walk along paths and then they get to see a page at a time, so many feet apart. So it was a symbol, a token of that community, Maryville's gratitude towards Denso for coming into the community and creating jobs and really assimilating into the community. So I guess I'll leave it at that. There's many more things I could say about this, but at the end of the day, whether it's job creation, and you mentioned I'm also the chair of Japan-America Society of Tennessee. We talk about all this fancy stuff and statistics, and I try to impress you with numbers, but at the end of the day, it's about those relationships, and it really does come down to the one-on-one. So, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Oh my gosh, it's like we can leave now. Just to wrap it up. No, so as you can tell, all of you are really doing, in your everyday work, it's about grassroots relationships, exchange, connections, and I would love to hear why you do the work that you do. Is it okay if you go first?
Yes, because I skipped to talk about my first experience of grassroots exchanges, let me say, and connect it to the question by Nozomi-san. Yes, I am originally from Osaka, which is in the western part of Japan, and my family was not really, associated with some international things. Like my background was rather domestic, and I didn't have any relatives who work in the field of international affairs, and my family didn't go abroad until we made a trip to Guam when I was an elementary child. And but when I was an elementary school student, there was the Osaka Banpaku, which is the Osaka Expo, large-scale world exposition held in Osaka. And it was so popular among my schoolmates. And we've been saying, how many times have you been to the World Exhibition? And so I had a chance to go there a few times. And when I first went there, it was the Scandinavian Pavilion. And they had a very beautiful picture, like a widescreen picture of field over there. And it was so beautiful. It was like a stained glass and like white. And I really wanted to go there, get there, or maybe study there. And that was the big impact which is made on me. And later, I visited the Pakistan pavilion for lunch. And they had the curry buffet. And they had a variety of curries. But during that time, especially in Osaka, when we thought curry, it was just one kind, like instant curry. So I was surprised to see so many kinds of the curries, the color of soup, and also as well as the variety of ingredients. So I really sensed that the world is very wide. And also with my schoolmates, I visited the Cyprus pavilion of Cyprus. And the pavilion was not really big, and it seems that there was only one associate who was there when we went there. And it was the young male associate, and he was very friendly. And we couldn't speak English very well, but we tried to use all the simple words we had. And we have just kind of managed to communicate with him. And we had a very heartwarming experiences in communicating with him in English. So since then, I really felt that I wanted to improve my English and visit foreign countries and maybe live there and meet with many foreign people. And that was the first grassroots experience which I had. And my kind of a dream at that time came true. And I'm now here, and I'm very happy about my current job. Yes. Thank you very much.
Well, I just think that's so amazing to hear, like the childhood experience, right? The variety of curry. Who knew that would inspire to become someone who's a diplomat and really lives and works around the world?
Food is important.
Food is important. Yes, it is, right? So, we talk about all these things that all of you here are doing just make such a big impact, and we really never know how that would evolve and unfold. So I just think that's such an amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you very much.
Okay, let's change it up a little bit. Why don't we ask Masami-san to answer the same question?
Why I do the work I do?
Yeah, what motivates you?
What motivates me? So I guess it's some of the things that I've already shared with you about. It's about the people-to-people connection. And I think, without sounding too dramatic, I really believe that the work I do changes lives. Because, if you're creating jobs, and think about a Japanese multinational company that comes to a rural community, creates 200 jobs, that's a life changer for the people who are able to become a part of that. So I find my work meaningful, and that's why I do what I do. Incidentally, I practiced as an attorney for about 15 years before I came to this position, but I made the deliberate decision to leave that career and to come into public service for that reason. But again, I find it meaningful because of the end result of, job creation being a life changer, but also because of the relationship building that happens in the process. And I wanted to add that another element of my job that I enjoy is being able to witness that, and on a very small scale, being a part of that relationship building. So naturally, with the Japanese companies, I play a bigger role, although I do oversee all of it. So my role is global director, so I do interact with all the foreign companies that come to the state, or at least I'm involved in that. But I suppose the cultural sensitivity that I have as a result of my background, my upbringing, which all of you in this room have, naturally, makes a huge difference. And so whether it's with a Japanese company or a German company, I don't speak the language, I've only visited a few times, but nevertheless, I am aware that there is a cultural difference, that there may be some things that, I need to learn, that I shouldn't take things for granted. One interesting thing is, of course we all converse in English, but the same words can mean different things depending on the culture. But I'm aware of that, and so I can approach that situation with that awareness. And I just want to reiterate, I'm so impressed by the JOI program because it's about that, isn't it? You bring the awareness, you show people, you tell people that here's a different culture, and that makes the difference in the world. And of course, each one of us cannot, teach everything to everyone, but it's a wonderful start. So anyway, so that's why I do the work I do, and that's why I enjoy it. And of course, I get to interact with my Consul General, who is in Nashville, so I love that part of my job.
I love that part too.
There's mutual love happening here. It's a really lovable stage. Wonderful, thank you. So, Yoshi-san, same question. How about you? Why do you do the work that you do, and what really motivates you every day? I know for everyone, it's not an easy job. I know they have a lot of hardships.
Yeah, well, I think I can maybe share some personal stories why, and then also professionally too, and then. But personally, I was born in Japan. My father is Japanese, my mother is American. So, I stuck out. I didn't look very Japanese. Still don't. I don't think too much, right? But like for example, going to like Nyugakishiki, like the entrance ceremony for first grade. I was the only kind of brown-haired boy in the picture, and so I stood out, and and then kind of coming to the U.S. after that, I stood out again because, I wasn't blonde hair, blue-eyed, or, actually people here in America didn't know what I was. People thought I was maybe Hispanic, or I even got Eskimo for some reason, but that's a whole different story. But yeah, so I always felt, where do I belong in the world, right? So am I Japanese, am I American? But it was through kind of Grassroots Exchange, all my experiences, kind of growing up, I certainly have my parents to thank and the friends that I made over the years too. But it's through those relationships, as Consul General and Masami-san has talked about, and all the panelists beforehand, that I truly learned, I guess, my place, which is I belong everywhere, and I am part of the world, and I'm both Japanese and American at the same time, and. So I found my true belonging because of Grassroots Exchange on a personal note. Professionally, like Tennessee, Japan is Georgia's #1 foreign investor too. There's over 600 Japanese affiliated companies in Georgia that have invested over $11 billion, and about 40,000 people are employed by Japanese companies. So a lot happened economically and through business. And I don't want to say it's because of Grassroots Exchange, of course. Companies from Japan and, companies from, anywhere outside the U.S. Coming to a particular state, they come because of, business reasons and, what's the best business climate, what's the best environment for success. But Grassroots Exchange helps kind of build that environment, that ecosystem that helps make a lot of those kind of non-business related kind of endeavors be successful, whether it's an easy place for expats and their families to come and kind of live in and go to school. But yeah, it's I think Grassroots Exchange plays a very important role in economic development, and it helps kind of bring in jobs, and it's certainly that ecosystem. The Grassroots Exchange, whether it's formal events or festivals like Japan Fest, in which we have 25 people come each year during normal years, before COVID, but or kind of smaller, kind of conversation groups that our JOI coordinator helped start, which is called the Nihongo Eigo-kai, which is kind of help bring smaller people together for more intimate kind of collaboration. For smaller gatherings to big events, I think Grassroots Exchange really, truly allows people to get to know one another on a personal level. That's everlasting. I know since we're kind of celebrating JOI, many of the JOI coordinators that I had a pleasure of working with still, contact us, stay in touch with their host families and homestays, and They celebrate and send Christmas cards and nenga-jos to each other. So it's really everlasting. And in today's kind of very strange society, a lot of things are sort of divisive, sort of not, but at the same time, people are labeling each other, right? But I think that's why Grassroots Exchange and kind of the people-to-people relationship is more important than ever. To kind of really bring the people together here around the world. And peace and understanding is, I think, going to be so important moving forward with all the kind of security issues or other difficulties that we're having, whether it's internationally or domestically. So I think, Grassroots Exchange is definitely a pivotal part of our society, and kind of with any kind of society or any project or campaign, the top-down and bottom-up approach is always kind of key to success. And so I certainly commend the Laurasian JOI program, CJP, Japan Foundation, everyone from at kind of large organizations to support Grassroots Exchange, but then all the smaller community organizations and people involved in it to help out from the bottom up too. So hopefully. This would be a great way to, continue on the legacy and, 20 years and many, many more, hopefully. So, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And I heard at the very beginning a little bit of a rivalry between like Georgia and Tennessee. I heard him, put it in there, just a little bit. It's okay. It's a healthy competition. So let's talk about sister city relationships, because that's one way that Grassroots really shows up. And I know between Tennessee and Georgia, you all have a lot of sister city relationships. So Consul General Fukushima, can you please talk about what do you think about sister city relationships? But also I know you have a really good example that was in Mississippi, a Japan festival, that one of your JOI coordinators from year 18, I believe, played such an important role to have this Japan festival.
Okay, talking about sister city relations, in our 5-state area, we have about 21 sister city relationships, and Tennessee has 8. And this week, I happen to have to make 2 visits which are related to sister city relations. Today, prior to this event, I had a chance to visit a local school in Chattanooga, and that was the Chattanooga School for the Arts and Sciences. And we arranged to donate the books related to Japan, and that's why I visited there. But they are cherishing their good relations with Tono in Iwate Prefecture. As mentioned before, there's a sister city relations. And although they could have mutual visits prior to the COVID, they are not able to make it. But today, I've noticed that they have a large display case with things that they brought from Tono, and they are cherishing it. And also they are cherishing their relations with Japan. They are looking forward to resume sending their students to Japan next year, hopefully. And also, prior to that, or early this week, I had a chance to visit Sumano, and Sumano has a good sister city relations with Zama in Kanagawa Prefecture, and they celebrated their 30th anniversary of their sister city relations. And like Maryville and Denso, Sumano has a Nissan factory, and so does the Zama city in Kanagawa. And their relationship started because both of them have Nissan factories, but they have developed them to have some exchanges with schools and also students, like they had mutual visits. And during the COVID-19, they couldn't, do it, but Sumano City made a Zama Park to remember their sister city relations in Sumano. So those are the very nice examples of the sister city relations. And in each event, I could feel Southern hospitality. I think that their Japanese partner cities have been enjoying for many years. And our Japan Festival Mississippi turns out to be very successful. Like we at the consulate organized it with the help of the then JOI coordinator in Jackson, Mr. Daiki Suematsu. And we showcased Japanese culture with tea ceremony, Japanese dance, Japanese drum, Japanese sake, and various things. And we anticipated or hoped to have about 1,000 visitors, participants in it. But the turnout was 2,000. And we could have very favorable or positive responses and comments in our questionnaire we did afterwards, as well as the local press coverage. So those are the some examples of the successful events we coordinated with the help of JOI coordinator, or maybe with the sister city relations. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. That's amazing. Especially, I remember you shared that with the Japan Festival, because it was right after or during COVID, and how hard that is to have an in-person event. But you pulled it off, and they had 2,000 people in this time. That's absolutely amazing. So congratulations. Yes. So we're down to like 5 minutes, or we're down to the last question. There's so much things I want to ask, but because we don't have much time left, let's really try to wrap this up. I would love to hear, what does grassroots mean to you? Grassroots exchange, grassroots relationship, exchange, whatever it is, in your own words. What does that mean to you? Or it could be, why is it important to you? I see confused faces. It could also be, what do you see of grassroots in the future? Anyway, just or I could say final words that you want to share with the audience around grassroots exchange, grassroots relationship. And let's start with, just change it up for the last time. Let's start with Yoshi-san, and then we'll go Yoshi-san, Consul General, and then Masami-san. Okay?
Well, I think we've kind of talked about the essentialness and the importance of grassroots exchange, and so maybe I'll kind of talk about two very quick stories, and then kind of why it's so important, I think, right? So kind of talking about sister cities, as Consul General just did. Because of the JOI program, we were able to do more sister city or kind of partnerships and activities in Georgia. We have 10 sister cities in Georgia, some more active than others, and there's a sister state and also prefecture, and then sister port as well. But just kind of two quick stories is, because of the sister city relationship, we are part of the Asian Pacific Children's Convention, where we get to send 10 and 11-year-olds, elementary and middle school students to Japan every year to be part of a cultural exchange. And as part of that program, we actually have to do a performance to kind of showcase our grassroots and kind of our cultural presence. So when we hosted the JOI coordinator, she was actually our chaperone, and so she taught our kids how to do soranbushi, but actually not just that, but then the kids taught her how to do some American dances, including like the Cupid Shuffle, which is like the hip hop version of what the electric slide, right? So, but yeah, so kind of dance, kind of cross, there was language barriers, but through, I think, dance, they were able to really kind of connect at a personal level, and the kind of the weeks and days leading up to the exchange, they practiced their dance, and that really built a bond between the JOI coordinator and the students that we sent to Japan, and they really had just had a wonderful time. And then kind of another, just one quick story is that in 2016, 5 years ago, Atlanta hosted the Grassroots Exchange, where we hosted over 200 people from Japan for kind of a 10-day program where people kind of did some tourist activities, but then the main part of the program is where they went to actually 16 different cities, many of them actually part of the Metro Atlanta area, but many of them kind of really far away, as far as 5 hours away, which was kind of part of the sister city kind of that network. We still hear back from the Japanese visitors that we had, even today, that that was the kind of the best experience that they had. Wasn't going to the tourist attractions, but spending time with the families, and kind of really learning about the American lifestyle, and spending kind of time in rural parts of Georgia, and kind of really learning Americana and American culture. So I think that's kind of what embodies Grassroots Exchange, and those kind of two stories a little bit. And I just wish that we could do so much more activities. I know that a lot of times the manpower, the resources, and kind of the funding is always an issue with nonprofit organizations, Grassroots Exchange programming. But I think the JOI program has certainly planted a seed of what could happen, and kind of larger scale. So hopefully we can all help in this room, and everyone kind of tuning in online, that we can do play our own part in kind of Grassroots Exchange, and keep it going and expand it, and kind of really use that as a tool to really promote peace and understanding throughout the world.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you. I really appreciated what you said, playing each person playing a role. I think that is so true. All of us can do something, and I think that's really the beauty. Thank you for that message. Yes, Consul General Fukushima, how about you?
Yes, like maybe as my experiences in Expo 50 years ago, still living as a vivid memory in myself. I think that is the person-to-person exchange, which lingers in the hearts of people. And also the mayor of Smyrna City I met earlier this week, she promotes the sister city relations with Zama, and her family started the exchange. Her family was involved in these exchanges for many years. Like her grandfather had the exchange with people of Zama, and so did her parents. So I felt that with the passion and dedication of the people, I think it would last over generations. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that beautiful story, too. It's amazing to hear 3 generations of relationships. If I can just imagine everyone here, especially JOI coordinators, the work that you do, if you can imagine that will be 20, 30, 40, 50, hundreds of years of relationships that you are creating. Yeah, that's a wonderful story. Thank you. Okay, Masami-san, bring it home.
I don't know that there's much to add now, but let me just answer one of your other questions about what is Grassroots Exchange going to look like in the future. And I think it's going to look very much the same, because as somebody else, many people have already said, it has to be person to person. And I'm glad that we are taking advantage of virtual tools. So maybe that aspect will change or look a little more advanced, I guess, 20 years from now. But at the end of the day, I think it's person to person. And I think it has to be the face-to-face. And that's very Japanese. And I'm American enough that for a time I thought it's just too many meetings and we don't really have to see each other. But we do. And I think we all realize that now after the pandemic or during the pandemic. So that's one thing. The other thing is I'm just going to have to repeat what both Yoshi and Consul General have already said, which is, number one, I think each person does his or her own part wherever they are. And I hate to put you on the spot, but I loved your story about the Senbazuru, the 1,000 cranes, because that is such a fantastic example. Because if you think about it, that's something people can do even if you don't speak each other's languages. You can sit there in silence and do it. And I love the idea that you have brought something that's Japanese in so many ways, but that it's a healing tool. And you brought it into your community, and I just find that to be such a wonderful example of this Grassroots Exchange. And then finally, what Consul General said about just things lasting, and I will finish with this story. So our very first foreign direct investment, sort of official company in Tennessee, was Toshiba. And it happened during the color TV trade war, or I think many of you are too young to remember this, but back in the 70s, so there was a lot of Japan bashing that was happening. And there were pictures in the news of Americans taking a sledgehammer and destroying Toyota cars, and also Japanese appliances. So long story short, Japanese companies were told that if they wanted to sell Japanese products here, they were going to have to make them here, manufacture them here. And as a result of that, back in the 70s, Toshiba decided to come to Tennessee and built a color television factory there. Sadly, it closed and no longer there, but there is a Toshiba Drive still in Laverne, Tennessee. So what I'm trying to say is that, so that company left. But again, as I told you, there are 200 companies from Japan today. And it really sort of followed one after another. So Toshiba came, and other Japanese companies said, well, if Toshiba chose Tennessee, there must be some good things about Tennessee. There must be a reason why they came there, and so on and so forth. And we are still reaping the benefits of that first investment, that first relationship. And so you talked about the people to people and legacies and Consul General's story of the expo so many years ago, but it is the same with what's happening on an economic and business level. But again, just to remind you, it's about people.
Yes. Well, thank you all very, very much. This is amazing. Thank you.